objectives, communication and operations management, system access control objectives, and these all have a multitude of bullet points underneath it as well. Business continuity, compliance objectives. So there's a lot of common basis for developing organizational security. And here's just an example of the 2005 Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, which is part of ISO 27001. Basic plan, define the scope of the policy, define the policy, define the risk approach, so forth and so on. And a couple more slides that you can see relate to it. Many components of that particular one. Major process of implementing 7799-2. Again, and it's the Plan, Do, Check, Act type of cyclical process. Reflecting that this is not a static process. It needs to be continually revised as time goes by. I put in here some representation of some of the series standards that are out there. The difficulty with the ISO standard is it's incredibly expensive and it's not free and public. Organizations pay to have access to it, and the criticism is that ISO standards are what is referred to as a mile wide and an inch deep. In other words, they're trying to cover a vast array of different issues, but they're not really giving much meat behind what they are hoping to set standards for. If we look at NIST security models, the National Information Systems and Technology security modules based on the SP Series 800, SP 800 series. These are freely and publicly available if you go ahead and just Google that. National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is described in a variety of documents available from the Computer Security Resource Center of the National Institute for Standards and Technology. I think the website is csrc.nist.gov. There are a ton of different types of policies out there. Some of the more common ones is the 812, which is the Computer Security Handbook. Great reference and guide for security managers or administrators in the routine management of information security. 800-14 is generally accepted principles and practices for securing IT systems. And then SB 800-18, which is the guide for developing security plans for IT systems. This is really the foundation for a comprehensive security blueprint and framework. It provides detailed methods for assessing, designing, and implementing controls and plans for various sized applications. So these are just some examples of different types of standards that are out there. A little in-depth look at 800-14. Security supports the mission of the organization. Security is an integral part of sound management practices. It should be cost effective, so forth and so on. And these are freely available, as I had mentioned before. You can download them from a variety, right from NIST's website. They're in PDF format. There's a ton of them out there. I really like these for a variety of reasons, mainly in that they're freely and publicly available. The IETF Security Architect is another option that we would want to look at. So this is put out by the Security Area Working Group. While there's no specific architecture that is promoted through the Internet Engineering Task Force, the Security Area Work Group acts as an advisory board for protocols and areas developed and promoted through Internet Society. They do have a site security handbook which provides an overview of 5 basic areas of security with detailed discussions on the development and implementation of these systems. There are chapters on such important topics as security policy, security technical architecture, security services, security incident handling, and so forth and so on. If we look at another avenue of establishing an information security program within a particular organization, we can look at things called baselining and best business practices. These are great methods for collecting security practices, but the drawback is they often provide less detail for the design and implementation of all these practices needed by an organization that would complete the methodology. So, it's possible to gain information by baselining and using best practices and piece together the desired outcome of the security process, and thus you're basically working backwards to an effective design. So you are establishing what you want to accomplish, and then you work your way backwards. Federal Agency Security Practices site, the FASP.NIST.gov, is designed to provide best practices for public agencies. It can be easily adapted to private institutions. Documents found on the site include specific examples of key policies and planning documents, implementation strategies for key technologies, and outlines for hiring and documents for key security personnel. So then we can really begin to look at, the design of security architecture, and one way I like to look at it is through what's sometimes referred to as spheres of security, and this is really where we can begin to look at management controls over security processes that are designed by strategic planners, performed by security administrators for the organization. Management controls address the design and implementation of security planning process and security program management. And then we bring in operational controls that deal with the operational functionality of security within the organization. These are designed to cover management functions and low-level planning, like things like disaster recovery and incident response. Operational controls also address personnel security, physical security, the protection of production inputs and outputs. Technical controls address the tactical and technical issues related to designing and implementing security in the organization, and they also cover logical access controls like identification, authentication, authorization, accountability, and so forth. And really what we look at is, if we divide up our two things we want to look at, both focusing on the information that we're trying to protect. And if you look at the sphere of use on the left, we see that there are really four main components of categories of individuals that use information. The biggest one, obviously, is people. People within any organization are the biggest users of information. But also we have to make sure that we're aware that systems, networks, and internet also use that information. So therefore, when we go to put in a control or we evaluate what we're going to use for a particular security of a particular organization, we have to realize what areas those particular controls impact. And that's where we come into to the spheres of protection on the right. Again, same basic concept, but what we look at is what type of control do we want to implement to try to manipulate the behavior and the usage of a particular piece of information, whether we're talking about people, systems, networks, or internet. And as you can see, the left half of that sphere is very technical driven because that's really what they're dealing with, systems, networks, and internet. So we're looking at things like controlling access, backups, encryption, proxy servers, intrusion detection systems, patching programs, monitoring systems, and redundancy. And then on the other side, we look at security planning, education, and training, policy, and law. So there's a lot of different types of things